In a quiet village, far from tall buildings and bright city lights, there lived a girl who loved the sky. She was quiet, kind, and often alone, but not lonely. Every night, after dinner, she walked up a small hill behind her house. There, she sat on a rock and looked at the stars. The other children played games or watched shows, but not her. She liked silence. She liked space. She liked the feeling of tiny lights above her, dancing in the dark. Her name was Mina. She never told anyone why she loved the stars. But every night, she whispered to them as if they could hear. One evening, the sky was especially clear. The stars looked closer, brighter, and softer than before. Mina sat on the hill, her knees hugged to her chest, and whispered, "I wish I could keep one." She smiled at the thought. The next night, she brought a small glass jar with her, the kind people use for jam. She held it up toward the sky, carefully, gently, as if catching a snowflake. Nothing happened, of course. But Mina didn't look sad. She simply whispered, "Maybe tomorrow," and placed the jar beside her on the grass. Then she sat in silence, listening to the wind, watching the stars blink above her in the dark blue sky. Mina's grandmother once told her a story. She said, "Stars don't need to be caught. They need to be heard." Mina never forgot those words. So the next night, she brought paper and a pencil up the hill with her jar. She wrote a small note. It said, "Hello. My name is Mina. Do you ever get lonely up there?" She folded the paper, placed it inside the jar, and left it on the ground, pointing toward the sky. Then she sat quietly, watching, waiting, breathing with the night. She didn't expect the stars to talk. She just wanted them to know someone was listening. From that night on, Mina brought a new note each evening. Some were short, just a word or a feeling. Others were longer, like small letters. "Today I felt brave. I saw a red bird. Do you know what snow feels like?" She placed each one into her glass jar and set it on the same spot on the hill. Then she looked up, always in silence, always with soft eyes. The stars never replied, but somehow Mina felt lighter each time. It was like giving a secret to the sky and knowing it would never be broken. Not every night was easy. Some evenings, the sky was covered in clouds. No stars, no moon, just gray. Mina still climbed the hill, even when her feet were wet from rain or cold from snow. She still brought her jar, still wrote her notes, but inside, a small voice began to grow. A voice that asked, "Why am I doing this?" Some people in the village began to notice. "She's always up there, talking to the sky," they said. "It's sweet, but strange." Mina heard their words, but said nothing. She just kept walking, kept writing, kept waiting. The hill became her quiet place, even when her hope began to fade. One evening, after a long day of rain, the sky finally cleared. The stars returned, bright and silent as ever. Mina sat on the hill, tired but calm. She opened her notebook and slowly wrote, "Are you listening?" She placed the note into her jar and set it down gently. Then she looked up, and something changed. One small light moved. Not fast, not flashing, just a slow, steady drift across the sky. Not an airplane, not a falling star, just movement. Mina's heart beat faster. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it real? Or just her wishful eyes? She didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, she smiled again. Days passed, then weeks. Mina returned to the hill each evening with new notes, always placing them in the jar, always hoping for another sign. But the stars were still. The sky stayed quiet. No movement, no reply. Doubt began to grow. Maybe that small light was just her imagination. Maybe the stars couldn't hear her at all. One night, she didn't write anything. She just sat there, knees to her chest, tears slowly falling down her cheeks. "I tried," she whispered. "I really tried." That night, Mina fell asleep on the hill, her jar beside her, empty. The sky above her blinked gently, but made no sound. Before sunrise, as the sky turned soft with early light, Mina woke up. The air was cold and quiet. She sat up slowly, brushing sleep from her eyes. Then she saw it. Inside her jar, something glowed. Soft, golden, and small, like a folded piece of paper lit from within. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. On the paper, written in careful, glowing letters, was a single word: yes. Mina stared at it, her eyes wide, her mouth open in silence. For a long time, she said nothing. Then slowly, a smile formed, the kind that comes from deep inside the heart. The stars had answered. From that day forward, Mina still walked up the hill every night. But now, her steps were lighter. Her notes became softer, warmer, full of hope. She didn't need the stars to answer again. That one word, yes, was enough. It lived in her pocket, close to her heart. People in the village noticed the change. Mina smiled more. She spoke a little more. But she never told them what had happened on the hill. It was her secret, a quiet truth shared between her and the sky. And somehow, just knowing she had been heard was enough to make the world feel brighter. Years passed, and Mina grew older. She became a teacher in the village school. Every week, she would take her students up the same hill where she once sat alone. She didn't tell them about the jar or the glowing paper. Instead, she asked them, "What would you say to the stars?" The children would laugh, shout, and whisper their answers. Some were silly, some were kind, some were full of dreams. Mina listened to them all, her eyes shining gently. She had returned to the same place, but this time not alone. The hill was no longer just hers. It had become a place of sharing, of listening, and of quiet magic. One evening, Mina saw a little girl stay behind after the others had gone. The girl held a tiny jar in her hands and looked up at the stars, just as Mina had done long ago. Mina didn't say anything. She simply sat beside her in silence. The little girl whispered, "Do they still listen?" Mina smiled and nodded. "Always," she said. From that night on, more jars began to appear on the hill. Some held drawings. Some held poems. Some just had one word. Mina didn't read them. She didn't need to. The stars were listening. That was enough. Now, the hill is known as Star Hill. People visit from nearby towns just to sit in the quiet and watch the sky. At night, the hill glows gently with the reflections of glass jars. Some say the stars are brighter there. Others say it's just the magic of hope. Mina still visits, though she's older now. She walks slowly, her hands behind her back, and smiles at the children who sit in silence. She never tells them her secret. But every time she sees a jar on the ground, she remembers the night she found the glowing word. And every time she looks up, she still whispers, "Thank you."